Okay. There we go. Mm, Hey everybody, it's 1 o'clock. Today is Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. And you guys are biology 1208, section 91, my Tuesday afternoon biology for science majors laboratory. And let's see. Last week we didn't meet because we were doing Mardi Gras. Did y'all do Mardi Gras? Or did you try to stay warm, make snowmen, something like that? It was cold last week, remember? And then there's all that. And then the week before that, we did plant anatomy and all the plant stuff before that. So um, today is our last meeting before your midterm practical, which is next week. Okay. So don't forget, next week, 1 week from today, Tuesday next week at 1 o'clock, you have to log on to my courses, and at 1 o'clock sharp, you take your practical. And at the same time, listen to me, at the same time, you have to Zoom. You have to Zoom where I can see a live video feed of your face, not your screen, not the ceiling, nothing like that. I have to be able to see your face. Yeah, still there. No video, no credit. Did you hear me? No video, no credit. So you have to Zoom in order to get credit for the exam. So make sure you have stable, reliable connection to the internet and get all your ducks in a row so you can take your midterm exam. If you blow it, you blow it. So I want you to know that up front. And I told you that the first day of class. So next week, at 1 o'clock, just from 1 to 1:30. It's only open for 30 minutes. You can't take it all day long. It's just for 30 minutes. It's not going to take you 30 minutes. It takes most students about 10 or 15 minutes to finish it. It's going to be 25 multiple choice questions. It's all going to be pictures of things that you've seen before, provided you've seen everything I've showed you this semester, all the PowerPoints and everything. You have access to all that stuff. And I'm just going to basically ask you the same kind of questions that I've pointed out in all the going over the PowerPoints and all the Zooms that we have done. Every one of my Zoom meetings is recorded and is on my courses, so you can go back and preview the stuff if you need explanation, on what's going on a particular PowerPoint or whatever. So you have all that stuff. So that's next week. Do you guys have any questions about anything before we get started today? No, you good? So far, so good. Handling this lab all right, I'm assuming. How many people are here? There's only 6 of you here. So I hope the remaining 20 probably that are not here today are going to view this recording sometime this week, hopefully before next week, because spread the word, chat or whatever. It's a practical, your midterm exams next week. You can't miss it. You got to Zoom, et cetera, et cetera. Today's lab is going to be short and sweet, kind of like last week. It's not going to take long. We can just go through it, probably be in and out of here in 20, 30 minutes, I'm thinking. It's not going to be long. Because a lot of what I'm doing this semester, basically just showing you pictures. Because on an ordinary semester, like, before the social distancing and all the other precautions that we've had to take because of this COVID stuff, we can't like meet in lab and huddle around each other and handle material and share stuff with the individual. That's not safe. So without doing a lot of the hands-on stuff, it frees up a whole bunch of time. So I basically just kind of show you some stuff and say, hey, learn it. So it works though. It's kind of nice. I think when we get through this COVID stuff, if I'm still around, I don't even know if I'm going to be here after all this. I might keep these PowerPoints and use them with the hands-on lab too, because I put a lot of work into putting these together, but they're kind of nice. I think they work out all right. So anyway, without further ado, let's talk about the classification of fruits. Okay, and so far, we did the plant tissues, plant anatomy, where it's all flowering plants, flowering this, that, and the other. Remember, the flower of the flowering plants is the reproductive part of the plant. It's how the plant procreates. Remember, we're talking about procreation. Well, the baby plants, you want to call them that, are the result of the flower. A fertilized flower produces an embryo, which is contained inside the seed. And the ripened part of the flower that contains the seed is the fruit. So what makes a fruit a fruit? A fruit must have seeds. I've actually been asked this question. Like, okay, you got a vegetable garden or a fruit garden? What kind of garden do you have? Almost everybody says a vegetable garden. So what are vegetables? What are fruits? There is a botanical difference between the two, vegetables and fruits, opposed to, in the kitchen or in the garden, There's a funny meme that talks about vegetables and fruit, Let's see if I can remember what it was. I kind of just painted myself in a corner. So like knowledge, I think knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, but wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. You wouldn't put tomatoes in a fruit salad, would you? That's kind of gross. And knowledge is knowing that tomatoes are fruit, but wisdom is not putting them in fruit salad. So you can share that if you want. But anyway, there's many. But if you're looking at something out of your garden or whatever, or the produce portion of the supermarket, and it contains seeds, it's fruit. Likewise, if you find something in the produce part of the supermarket or out of your garden and you eat it or whatever, it does not contain seeds. And it's a different part of the plant. So what other part of the plant? Well, remember there's 3 parts of the plant. Remember there's the stem, the leaves, and the roots. If you're eating a stem, a leaf, or a root, you're eating a vegetable. Other than that, you're eating a fruit. So, and we're going to talk about different types. Well, what are types of vegetables? Well, you know, leaves. If you're eating leaves, like what kind of leaf? Vegetables. Well, spinach, cabbage, salad. You know, the lettuces of various types. Those are all leaves. That's all. Those are all vegetables. Stems would be like celery. That's the stem of the celery plant. And then the roots, like radishes and carrots, and things like that. No seeds, but they're a stem, or root, or a leaf. Okay, so fruits. We're talking about different fruits. Well, the different fruits, every species makes its own fruit that contains its own embryos, etc. And so we have classes of them to help kind of group them together. And grouping them kind of helps understand the genetic relatedness to different groups, you know. So biologists love to classify things, right? And so in a normal semester, I would give students a handout that looked just like this. And it's basically groups all the fruits, or most of them. There's some other weird exceptions or types that I don't know include, but most year, I'm looking for the laser. There it is. There we go. Anyway, most of your typical fruits that you're familiar with fall into one of these 2 categories. Remember, what makes a fruit a fruit? It's got to have seeds, right? And I'm going to go through this list, and then the following slides are going to be examples of them. And the examples are what I'm going to use on your practical. I'm going to like show you a picture of whatever kind of fruits and classify this fruit or name this type of fruit or whatever. It'll be one of these categories. Okay. Anyway, but you got categories and subcategories. 2 main categories: fleshy versus dry fruits. A fleshy fruit is referring to the ovary of the flower. And the ovary contains the ovules, which eventually become the seeds, right? And so when it's mature, the ovary is going to be fleshy and succulent, you know, like a normal juicy piece of fruit. Versus other species, when the ovary is mature, it's not succulent or whatever. It's dry and hard, okay? And so the wall of the ovary is dry and desiccated. And inside that dry, hard structure, you're going to have your seeds. Okay, so 2 different categories: fleshy versus dry. Most of the fruits that you're familiar with, when you think about fruit and you're going to eat some fruit and make a fruit salad, it's going to be a fleshy fruit. Okay, and there's the 2 main categories of fleshy fruits, and they are simple versus complex. And what makes simple simple and complex complex is the number of ovaries involved. Okay, if it's just one ovary, one piece of fruit, it's a simple fruit. Okay, if it's multiple, more than one ovary, it's going to be a complex of one type or another. Okay, and so under simple fruits, there's 3 main categories: pomes, drupes, and berries. What makes a pome and a drupe, and a berry a berry? Well, it's all in the structure of the ovary. Okay, the tissues that make up the ovary wall and how the seeds are supported inside the ovary. Okay, the first category of simple fleshy fruits are called pomes, P-O-M-E. Examples of pomes, I've in parentheses the species as the example. Who makes pomes? Apples, like an apple tree makes a pome. A pear tree makes a pome. rose bushes makes a poem, okay? Like an apple is a poem. A pear is a poem. And a rose hip, you might not be familiar with a rose hip. A rose hip is the fruit of a rose bush. And it looks like a little miniature apple. So how can you recognize this? You know, what if there's some kind of other weird species of plant that I've never seen that makes poems? What makes a poem a poem? Well, basically, it makes a core, or it possesses a core. Like if you eat an apple, what's left over? An apple core, right? The same thing like a pear. When you're done eating a pear, there's a pear. It's a core. And what the core is the inner fibrous carpels that contain these seeds, okay? And the outer wall is, you know, succulent and juicy and that sort of thing. None of the other simple fruits make that. So basically that's it, a poem. A poem makes a core, okay? All right. And we'll look at some pictures of these, all right? The second type of simple fleshy fruit is a drupe. What makes a drupe a drupe? Look in the parentheses, there are different species, different types of fruit that are considered drupes. And if you look at the examples, they all have something in common. Remember an apple and a pear, what they had in common was a core. Well, what is the drupes? What do the drupes have in common? Like a cherry and an olive and a plum and a peach. These first four right off the bat. And coconut probably throw you a curveball, but at least these first four, they don't have a core, do they? Now, what's inside the cherry and an olive and a plum and a peach? A pit, right? Like a stony pit. That's what makes a drupe a drupe. It has one seed on the inside, and it's contained in a stony, hard covering, all right, which you consider the pit. And of course, it has a fleshy exterior wall to that. The whole idea behind fleshy fruits, you know, of course, they contain the embryo of the plant, or embryos, like poems have multiple embryos, multiple seeds. But the whole idea is for the plant to deliver its seeds somewhere. And so how does it do it? Well, they rely on animals, okay? The fruit is usually colorful, you know, tasty, you know, and so the idea is, you know, how is the plant is planted, right? It can't move, it can't disseminate its young, so it uses animals to do that. So the animal will eat the food, the fruit, maybe pick it and walk off with it and eat it and throw away the seed or whatever, or eat the whole fruit and in its journey wherever, take a dump, and then of course the seeds pass in its stool, and that's what they're all about. Drupes just use one stony pit. Now you might see cherry pits, olive pits, plum pits, peach pits. Well, what coconut? Well, coconuts are considered drupes too. They're just like that, but when you buy a coconut from the store, the big hairy thing that you crack open and there's coconut milk on the inside and the white coconut meat that you eat, and coconut, the white stuff. Well, the coconut, it's not a nut, for one thing. It's a drupe. It's actually what you're eating is the pit. The fleshy stuff has been removed, okay? So it's just a weird example, but technically, the fruit of a coconut tree is a drupe. Okay, there you go. This third type are called berries. You've heard berry. You know, like what makes a berry a berry? Obviously, berry is a fruit, but there's this word berry is kind of loosely used in normal, regular speech. You know, but in a botanical setting, to a botanist, a berry is a specific type of fruit, okay? It has no fibrous interior, it has no core, no pit. It's succulent through and through. So in other words, if you ate it, you can eat the whole thing. Look at the examples of berries. what makes these are true berries. Okay, tomatoes are berries. Peppers, all kinds of peppers. Believe it or not, most of the peppers that you go to the produce section of the supermarket and this kind of pepper, that kind of pepper, most peppers are the same species. They're just different varieties or versions or breeds or whatever, how you want to say it, of the same species. They're just modified. Anyway, but all peppers are considered berries. And basically a tomato is a type of pepper, believe it or not. So tomatoes and all your peppers, bell peppers, jalapeno peppers, cilantro, ghost peppers, whatever, I don't know, whatever kind of peppers. Cherry peppers, I love those. Grapes. Grapes are grapes. Grapes are berries, okay? Then eggplant, that's kind of a weird one. Eggplant is just like a giant berry. But again, all these pieces of fruit, they're succulent through and through. Now, they're all berries. Now look under these next two items. I have them indented under berry because these two are technically berries, but they're modified berries. They're modified in one of two ways. And the ways they're modified is that, remember I said they're succulent, a berry is succulent through and through. However, some berries, the outermost wall of the ovary or of the fruit is changed. It can be detached from the inner carpels or not. And so that produces a different type of wall to the berry. For example, a certain kind of berry called a Hesperidium. These are modified berries in which the outermost ovary wall is easily attached from the inner carpels. Or you think of it in easier terms, basically you can peel it. You can peel these berries and you have the little wedges that are on the inside. Those are the carpels, and that's the carpels are like the individual little compartments that contain the seeds. Who does that? Well, look at my example. They're all the same. They're collectively, Hesperidia are the same thing as citrus fruits. Only in all citrus fruits are Hesperidia and vice versa. And what are examples of citrus fruits? Most people know this. Oranges, all your lemons, all your limes, all your grapefruits. Yes, satsumas and kumquats. Those are all citrus fruits. They're all Hesperidia. And if you think of them, particularly, say, oranges and tangerines, navel oranges, easily peeled for the most part. Then you can separate them out. Those are Hesperidia. Now, this second type is a type of berry called a pepo. These botanical terms are kind of wacky. Pepo, P-E-P-O. Pepos are berries that are not easily peeled. And so the outermost wall of the ovary is called an exocarp. Exocarp is detachable or not. And so here the exocarp is not detachable, or basically it just can't peel. It's succulent on the inside. It's pretty succulent through and through, but the outer part is very fibrous. And basically you have a name for that. Pepos produce a rind, like a watermelon rind, or the part of the pumpkin you eat, you're actually eating the rind. Okay, squash has a rind. Cucumbers are weird because you usually, what am I doing here? I'm peeling a cucumber, but you can't peel it with your hands. You got to peel it with a knife or a scraper or whatever. But it has a fibrous outside exocarp. And everything, they're all kind of squashy, like squash and gourds and pumpkins and watermelons. They're all technically berries, but they have this exocarp that can't be detached, or not that percent, a rind, or watermelon rind. Like what's left over. You're not a core, not a pit, a rind. When you eat watermelon. But those are all pepos, okay? All right. So those are all simple fleshy fruits. Now for the complex fruits. Now, remember, complex fruits involve more than one ovary. you know, everything, the simple was all just from one ovary. But how can you have more than one ovary? Well, two different ways. You can have just a flower that just possesses more than one ovary. And if that happens, then you have an aggregate fruit. Aggregate fruits are produced from one flower that has multiple ovaries. Okay. And you can always tell because they have parts of the flower kind of give it away, because the sepals are the part of the green part of the flower that encloses the petals, and the petals enclose the male and female reproductive parts of the flower, the ovary and the stamen and all that, the pollen producing portions. Well, if you can see, in an example, you'll be able to tell, where you can see the sepals. You know, you got sepals, and then you know that's one from one flower. And you're familiar with this. If you ever eat like a strawberry, everybody knows a strawberry, the red fruit, you know, strawberry. And then they have the red little leafy things that are on the strawberry that you don't eat. Those are the sepals. Those are left over from, you know, the opened flower. Raspberries and blackberries also exact same way. So those are all aggregate fruits. Okay. Now, there are also fruits called multiple fruits. And multiple fruits are multiple because they produce clusters of drupelets. And so each one is produced, there's a whole bunch of ovaries, but each ovary is produced from its own little flower. So it's a bunch of like a little miniature little drupe producing flowers. So technically they're simple fleshy fruits, but all clustered together. And it looks like one piece of fruit. They'll be all clustered together, or they'll be fused together. And but the idea is that each one of them is produced from its own flower. Classic examples of mulberry. Because if you look at a mulberry and a raspberry, or a mulberry and a blackberry, they look very, very similar. You see there's a big difference because mulberries don't have sepals, you know, blackberries do. Because each little bitty druplet is produced from an individual little flower. Figs are like that, and pineapples are like that, but these are different because they're a bunch of flowers, but then the druplets kind of fuse together to produce a fig or a big old pineapple. Okay, so those are some weird examples, but that concludes all the fleshy fruits, two categories, simple and complex. Now, everything else you see over here are dry fruits. And these rely less on animals for distribution and more on other mechanisms of delivery, like the wind. For many cases, the wind is going to take the seeds, or at least the fruit, one or the other, and carry the embryo away to a distant location to germinate. Okay. And the dry fruits, there's two categories, dehiscent and indehiscent. What does that mean, dehiscent and indehiscent? Well, remember, it's dry. The exocarp is dry. And inside the fruit is going to be the seed. But in a dehiscent fruit, what happens is the entire ovary containing the seed detaches from the mother plant. So it falls off, okay? In dehiscent fruits, the ovary stays intact. It just opens up. It splits open, okay? I said that completely backwards. Dehiscent splits open and the seeds come out. Indehiscent does not split open. The whole thing detaches, okay? You look at the examples, it'll make sense. There's three types of dehiscent fruit. In other words, these are the three types that split open, and they split open one of three different ways. Follicles are dehiscent fruits because they split open on one seam. They just have one little crack, it opens up, and then the seeds come out. Classic example, and you'll see milkweed. So I've never looked at a milkweed plant before. Well, that's fine. I'm going to show you what one looks like today in the following slides. The second one's called a legume. Everybody's seen a legume. You're real familiar with these. Legumes are dehiscent, dry dehiscent fruits because they split open on two seams, 1, 2. And they come apart and you got two little halves and then the seeds come out. And examples of those are any and all your bean pods, your pea pods, those kinds of things that split open. And you might think to yourself, hey, I eat green beans. Green beans aren't dry and dry, hard, dry fruits. Well, when you're eating green beans or peas, you're eating them before they're ripe. So they're not ripe. But if you let them go, they'd eventually be dry and they split open and they'd come out. So what you're eating are the embryos or the immature embryos. And peanuts. A peanut is a legume. And you say, well, peanut's not a nut? No, a peanut is not a nut. A peanut is a legume, just like a bean or a pea, because it's, you got two halves of the shell. The shell, what you're talking about, the shell is the exocarp. So it splits open like that. And then the third type of dehiscent fruits are called capsules. Capsules dehisce or split open on 3 or more seams. So that's the difference between these three. Split open on 1 seam, 2 seams, or 3 more seams. 3 more seams are the capsules, and examples like cotton, tulip, lilies, iris, okra. Again, okra, and most people, when they eat okra, they eat it before it's ripe. But if you let okra mature, it stays on the plant and it splits open. You get a whole bunch of seeds that come out. Cotton, cotton splits open. The white puffy things get caught in the wind and it's carrying the seeds in it. Okay, see how that works? So these are all dry dehiscent fruits. Okay. So the seeds leave the plant. Now this last group, the indehiscent, the fruit leaves the plant carrying the seeds. There's 4 types of these. First type are called samaras. A samara are the winged fruit. Winged, W-I-N-G-E-D, winged, has wings. They fly. No, they fly. They kind of like glide or just get caught in the wind and they spin and take off like that. Samaras or key, sometimes they're called keys, the keyed fruit, or keys from a maple tree or keys from an ash tree. But the whole fruit detaches from the tree and it kind of spins and it just kind of caught in the wind and takes off. Maple trees, ash trees, elm trees, they all produce samaras. Okay. The second one is called an akene. An akene, here, of course, the entire fruit detaches from the receptacle of the flower and it gets caught in the wind and it gets taken off. Classic example, the one you're probably most familiar with, is like a dandelion. Dandelion, the flower is yellow, but then when it ripens, it forms this white puff ball. That thing that you blow on. You blow it on, the little seeds go everywhere. Now, you think it's, the little seeds going everywhere. No, what's actually you're blowing and the little parachutes that are taken off. Each one of those is a piece of fruit. And in each of those pieces of fruit, there is a seed. Okay, doesn't split open, the whole fruit takes off. Those are all akenes. Who makes akenes besides dandelions? Well, all your sunflowers, all kinds of sunflowers. The big sunflowers that you eat, those are freaks of nature. They don't of course get caught in the wind because those are those are modified by humans. They're cultured. Domesticated. And anyway, your wild sunflowers that they disseminate their seeds like that. All your dandelions, all your daisy and daisy-like flowers like your asters. Those are all called composite flowers where they kind of have a colored center like a daisy has like a yellow center and then the white ray flowers on the outside. The showy parts of the flower on the outside are called ray flowers. They're usually sterile. And then the bullseye that's in the center, that's the disc. Well, that's not the part where the produces the seeds. The disc flowers, those are the only part that actually makes the seeds. So things that are like that are called composite flowers. Daisies and asters and sunflowers are all kind of like that. They all make akenes. They all make that same kind of fruit. All right, now this third category These are called nuts. You say, well, what makes a nut a nut? Well, a nut is, of course, it's hard. It doesn't hit the whole fruit detaches from the tree, and of course, then it doesn't get caught in the wind. It's hopefully it's just gonna. I guess the parent plant is hoping that maybe it'll roll off somewhere, or it'll be picked up by an animal and carried somewhere by a forgetful squirrel. Perhaps might take it and bury it somewhere and forget it's there, and then it'll germinate or whatever. But those are all nuts. An example of true nuts. Remember, a peanut is not a nut. A peanut is a legume. But true nuts are like pecans. Those are nuts. Acorns, hickory nuts, buckeyes. The list goes on. Those are all nuts. And then finally, this last category are called caryopses, or singular would be a caryopsis. And a caryopsis is a grain, which you commonly refer to a grain, or the seeds from grass. But when you say seeds from grass, it's really not grass seed. Each one is technically a piece of fruit, and there's a seed inside of it. And so all your grasses make caryopses, and all your grains, your cultivated grasses, or the things that they're domesticated that humans use for food, they're all modified grasses, like corn, wheat, rice, barley, rye. Those are all genetically modified grasses. They're grass. Like corn is grass, wheat is grass, and so on and so forth. And then all your other grass, like St. Augustine, Bermuda, Johnson grass, bluegrass, whatever kind of grass, they all make, it goes to seed, it produces a caryopsis. Okay, there you go. So you want to see some pictures of these. So that's what the following slides are examples of all these. So I'm just going to go through it. It's not going to take long, just a few minutes to show you these. And these are the pictures I'm going to use on your practical. And so this first slide right here is examples of some simple fleshy fruits. Here's your pome. Remember, the pome's one has a core on the inside. You see that? And then these are all drupes. And remember, what makes a drupe is they have the stony pit on the inside. This looks like a peach, right? This, I think, is a cherry. And then this looks like an olive, I think. There you go, some examples. More simple fleshy fruits continued. These are all berries. This is the mixed mat of different types of berries. It's kind of grapey looking thing, another kind of grape. This is gosh, I don't even know what you call this. It's like a tomato, but it's not a tomato. It's like a tomato-y thing. It's kind of like a berry, but and all your peppers, I can show you pictures of peppers, but these are all berries. They're fleshy through and through. Here's your Hesperidea. Remember your Hesperidea, all your citrus fruit. Here's section two different ways. This is a cross section, so you can see the little wedges. Each one of those is a carpel. The seeds will be in there, and this is longitudinal, so you're looking into the side of the wedge, the carpel. But, the citrus fruit that you can peel. And then these guys, a pepo, this is some kind of watermelon gourd kind of thing. I don't even know what you call this. I've never seen a watermelon like this, but it's good pepo. Remember, it's fleshy through and through, no core, no pit. And you got your seeds in there, but you have a rind on the outside. That's what makes a pepo a pepo. Okay. Then those are all simple fruits. Then you have your complex fruits. Remember, I told you the difference between your two categories of complex fruits is based on you got one flower or more than one flower. This is one flower because these are the sepals associated with that flower. And then this is the receptacle. The receptacle is what supports the ovary. And so these are you can see each one a little seed, it's from little bitty ovaries. So they're all clustered together, they're all kind of fused together. And then these, not really fused together, but they're all clustered together. But you can tell, again, you can see the sepals right here. So strawberry is the aggregate fruit. This is a blackberry aggregate fruit. And then opposed to these two. So these two kind of look alike. This is a mulberry. They can be red or they can be black like this, but they don't have sepals at the base. And if you saw a mulberry young enough, you could see parts of the flower sticking out. As a matter of fact, you barely see little white, little squiggly things sticking out of that. That's part of the flower associated with that druplet. So there's a bunch of druplets. So a whole bunch of druplets crowded together from a whole bunch of individual little flowers. So this mulberry is type of multiple fruit, multiple flowers. Okay. And then of course here's a pineapple, which is another example of a multiple fruit. Each one of these little compartments is produced from its own flower. Okay. And they kind of all fuse together like that. So there's your examples of that. That's all the fleshy fruits. Now the dry fruits, remember you have dehiscent and indehiscent. Now all three of these, they split open one kind of way. One seam, two seams, three or more seams. One seam, this is milkweed, by the way. This is what now you know what it looks like. And these all the seeds in there, and they come out, and there's like a white puffy thing that gets caught in the wind. And it splits open on one seam. That's a follicle. All your beans and peas and things like that, even peanuts, two seams, it's a legume. And then three or more, this is some kind of lily, like a daylily or something like that. It's a little pod, you know. They all got pods, different kinds of pod, one, two, or three or more seams splitting open. But these are capsules. If there's three or more seams, it's called a capsule. Okay? And then the indehiscent type, the kind that don't split open, but rather the whole fruit detaches from it. Now this is immature. It's not ready yet, but when it does mature, it's going to get dry and it's going to detach. This is one piece of fruit, and there's two. And then they detach and they'll say fly. They just kind of glide or spin, take off. This is a samara from a maple tree. Maple trees, elm trees, ash trees. Google the fruit of an ash tree or samara of an ash tree or the samara from an elm tree. You'll see what they look like. If you're curious. If not, just study these pictures. And then here's your, you little, blow the little parachutes go flying. Those are achenes, and this is from a composite flower. But each one of these is a piece of fruit, a whole bunch of little fruits. They're dry. They don't split open. Indehiscent, right? Dehiscent. Dehiscent means to split open. Indehiscent means it does not split open. So these don't split open. But if you dissected this piece of fruit, and this is something we would do in lab too, we would dissect fruit. You're going to open it up, and there's going to be a little black seed inside of that. So yeah, it's a piece of fruit, contains a seed, because this is the outer wall of the ovary, et cetera, et cetera. This thing right here that they're attached to is the receptacle of the flower. Okay, receptacle is what supports the ovary. All right, more indehiscent dry fruits continued. Of course, the nuts, the hard ones, are through and through, and these look like. What are those? Does anybody know what those are? Anybody seen these before? Anybody from Ohio? I think these are Buckeyes. They kind of look like Buckeyes to me. I think they are. But it's a nut, okay, which is a indehiscent fruit. And then this, Caryopsis, any of your grains, this is a modified grass, a cultivated grass, it's a Caryopsis. I think it's it. That is it. La fin. The end, right? So that's it, you guys. All 6 of you. Hope y'all do well next week. Remember, everything from like the Versed lab, be free game. Again, it's like I said, it's just going to be pictures of stuff, name this, name that, whatever I talked about and named and pointed out in those previous Zoom meetings. That's what you need to know. So, you know, practice going through the Zoom meetings, the recordings if you want, or look at the PowerPoints. You have access to all the PowerPoints on my courses. And if you have any questions between now and then, just send me an email. If you want to Zoom, have a private Zoom meeting to review something, we can do that. I'd be happy to do that. You know, just do it during my office hours. Or if you have a question about anything, you know, it's not that bad though. Students do pretty good. You know, if you've been kind of studying and keeping up, you should be doing just fine. Unlike those that are not here today, you know, they're going to have some trouble, but most students do okay. So you guys, any question? Nicholas, Anna, Brody, Deborah, and Nathan. 2, 4, 5. I'm missing somebody. Somebody left already, I guess. So 6 of us or 5? There's 6 total, 5 students. So you guys are good? No questions? Think you can handle it? Okay, well, you know where to find me if you need anything. All right, I'm going to cut y'all loose. See you next week. Remember, you got to Zoom, do my courses, and take your test, and good luck. All right, I will see you then.